Welcome to another episode of Four Guys Talking About AI. I'm here with my good buddies, Neil Polachek, John Gerard, and Greg Sterling. Hey, guys.
What's up, Andy?
Happening?
Hello.
Another big week here in AI. Let's unpack it. This week, some announcements from Mira Murati's company. Thinking Machines Lab is the company that closed on a $2 billion seed round, valued at $12 billion valuation. The direction of the company sounds like it's going to be more of an open source product. So really interesting kind of direction as to how they're the huge bet on her individually, but where that product goes, we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to zoom out and talk a little bit about this B2B marketing direction of where AI powered search is rewriting the rules. Your customer might never even hit your website, but they already met your brand through a chatbot. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Over at OpenAI, the playbook is changing. ChatGPT is becoming a shopping assistant. This is kind of tied to that B2B story a little bit. OpenAI wants to be part of every transaction. So we'll talk about how that is evolving. And our last story is going to be talking about agent mode for ChatGPT. It's a new announcement this week. And they've got a built-in browser for how you can use agents to be able to do shopping for you and other tasks. So let's jump into the first story here. Mira Murati, she was the ex-CTO for OpenAI. She just closed on a $2 billion seed round.
Is that like the biggest seed round ever by far?
It seems like it. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. And the interesting thing about this, from my perspective, is that they're leading out with their messaging, talking about how it's an open source product. And that to me is groundbreaking because, flying in the face of OpenAI, Perplexity, Claude, and others that are closed model, leading out with an open source model that also is open sourcing the model itself. So collaborative kind of inputs to shape the direction of the model. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, look, it's a really interesting bet, as you said, on her as a leader and a technologist. I think it's a curious move in my book. I think that so much of the value that's trying to be captured in the AI space right now is coming from the closed sourcing, from the holding on to these models and some of the magic behind them privately. And things are moving so quickly. It's hard to even quite envision what kinds of innovations we might expect to see on the open source side. What I'm guessing on this one is that this opens up the LLMs and the AI models to a whole bunch of applications, especially in robotics, which so many people now are thinking of as kind of the next, big thing. Like the next crazy innovations that we're going to see are robots that use these LLMs to respond to humans and answer questions and perform tasks and that kind of thing. And an open source version of all this stuff would be a really perfect fit for that revolution.
It plays right into Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, their fund. Mark Andreessen talks about how robotics is going to be the platform where there's all this talk about manufacturing coming back to the US, that's actually going to be the direction of where manufacturing happens in robotics.
Yeah,
So
it's funny. Yeah, every technology that gets created is, of course, looking for its killer app, and it's bizarre, but it's possible that AI's killer app is robotics.
How do you get to a $12 billion valuation? I'm sure they have next to nothing at some point, do people just keep throwing money?
It's a negotiation. It's a negotiation.
I know, but that's a lot of money.
It's unjustified, you're saying.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just raising the question. You think it's
I think if you're an investor and you're starting to see multiple public companies they're now in the $1 trillion valuation range, you sort of say, well, AI is going to get there faster than any other company. One of these is going to hit $1 trillion valuation in the next 5 or 6 years. May as well be this one. So two billion on 12 is just not that big a deal.
But 2 on 12, that's 16%.
That's also pretty rich.
That's pretty crazy, right? I mean, that's like the $12 billion valuation, giant balloon, ridiculous for, like you said, Neil, not even having a product, but putting $2 billion into it and only getting 16%, that's a different deal. That's a head scratcher. And I get it. There's so much competition to hire people. You're seeing Meta recruit people and give them $10 million sign-on bonuses and crazy, recruiting plans like this that are happening right now. So all that's happening. So they need to save some equity to incentivize people. I get it. Right. These are big
Sustainable.
numbers.
It's sustainable as long as the exits are there, right? Like that's kind of the way that this whole machine goes, is that, as long as there's, $100 billion exit or a $500 billion exit for these companies, the whole thing still works.
The only way that that's possible. I mean, Google and these handful of companies are paying a lot of money for these acqui-hires, right? Google in particular and Meta now. Those are the only companies that have that kind of money, or the public markets, right? You have to go public with one of these companies.
It has to be $1 trillion company at the end of the day. And, NVIDIA is also one of the lead investors. It's interesting to look at who the leading backers are, right? You got Andreessen Horowitz, NVIDIA, AMD, Excel, Cisco, Jane Street, that's a quant trading firm, ServiceNow. I thought that was interesting. ServiceNow is an investor in this. And the government of Albania invested $10 million into the
What do
company.
they know? What do they know that we don't?
I don't know. Maybe they just have access, and maybe there's other, favors that happen from that kind of access to give them a seat.
Well, they probably will get, they'll get, even though it's open source, they'll use these capabilities to run whatever internally technology.
Albania, the first AI ruled government.
Right. Right. Techno. What is it that Sam Altman said the other day? He said he's a believer in techno capitalism or something like that, which is like a kind of bloodless, bureaucratic, straight out of a kind of Orwellian, satire.
Somebody pointed out to me, if you hire somebody for these massive bonuses and the stock moves 0.5%, it's all taken care of. It's just that the numbers are
that's true.
Big. The numbers are so big these days that what's $100 million to pay somebody? The stock moves up a couple points.
Well, if you believe that there are only a few key individuals or a very small number of people who actually can deliver and could do this work, then you see it as a strategic imperative. I mean, there's been quite a brain drain from OpenAI, right? I mean, Meta poached some people. The co-founders left, Mira Murati among them. So I don't know how vulnerable they are as a result.
They definitely have the insider access. So, they know what that platform's about and how to position around it.
Right. So the New York Times reported that, with the kind of acqui-hire of Alexander Wang, who was the CEO of Scale AI, that did a lot of the training for these LLMs, Meta is now considering abandoning its open source model in favor of a closed one, which is interesting given what you guys were saying about thinking machines and the sort of future of open source versus these closed models.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, let's move on to the next topic here. Zooming out to B2B marketing, where AI search is rewriting the rules. So this idea of zero clicks that are happening on platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Google. There's a new Forrester report that revealed that 2 to 6% of organic traffic for B2B brands now originates from AI tools like those platforms. And even more striking, that it's growing 40% month over month. Greg, you wanna lead us off with this one?
I did not get access to the underlying report, but basically the coverage on it says what you just stated that the growth of B2B traffic or AI generated traffic in the B2B sector is significantly outpacing in the consumer sector, where people say it's really only 1% of all the organic traffic, which I don't think is an actual measure of the impact of AI on the consumer side. But putting that to the side for a moment, it just shows that the people who are doing B2B search, looking for software or evaluating competitors or whatever that cluster of activities is, are enthusiastically embracing AI, and this is the consequence of that. Now, it's not entirely true to say that it's purely zero click, because there are websites referenced and there are click-throughs, but it just doesn't happen at the same rate that you get on Google, which is diminishing because of its own AI products. It's also the case that the system prompt leaks from Claude and OpenAI revealed that they will try to answer questions from their training data when they can, which doesn't have links in it typically, and will only search the web when they feel under certain specified conditions that they need to for recent information or certain categories of information. Makes total sense, because you can quickly size up competitors, get a short list of companies with certain capabilities, much more efficient than trying to do the same kind of lookup on Google or Capterra or G2 for that matter, even though they offer a lot of structured data that evaluates all these SaaS tools. So I totally believe it. And, we're doing some of that kind of stuff ourselves just in our daily lives, as I'm sure you guys are.
Doesn't B2B extend well beyond software though too, Greg? I mean,
of course, anything.
A bank, I need a new bank. I need a
yes.
Sure. I mean, there are hundreds of B2B categories.
Right. Or I'm a small business and I'm looking for somebody to help me with my marketing or whatever.
Right. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot in that pile. And
I think, as we've talked about a little bit before, Google is also self-disrupting on this a little bit. So I think that they, obviously knew that as people are searching for various, product ideas or reviews or whatever it might be, that the usual suspects in terms of search results weren't quite going to cut it anymore, and that they might actually lose people going to Perplexity or ChatGPT to get those summarized results. So they're doing their AI, results up at the top now that are quite compelling. And I know that at least some of this switch or change is having, actually catastrophic effect on some businesses that had built their entire model around capturing search traffic for basic questions. And frankly, some of those I'm not too sad to see going away. There's the whole category of tech support help sites where you might say, hey, my iPhone is misbehaving in this way. And they were really just sort of scam or spam sites that were capturing those searches and then giving you garbage, have you tried to reset your phone kinds of answers.
Right. For
those are
ad impressions.
For ad impressions. Those are all but disappearing right now, because better answers are actually getting surfaced by the Google, AI response up at the top of the search, result. So there's some pretty bad businesses that I think are getting disrupted, but some, reasonable and actually pretty good ones as well. So it's going to be a pretty big shakeout here in the next 6 months or 12 months.
Those are expensive clicks on Google Ads too, right? B2B clicks are way more expensive than consumer clicks.
Yeah.
If they're self-disrupting, that has some sort of impact.
Well, but not necessarily on ads though, Andy. They're gonna protect their ad revenue. One quick thing that I saw elsewhere, and I'm having difficulty remembering the source. It was one of these sort of IT consulting firms. At any rate, the statement was that most B2B buyers, and it's probably software in this context, most B2B buyers have a brand or a name in mind when they go into a purchase process. So they already know somebody who's the leader in the segment, or somebody they've heard of, or somebody who's been recommended, and they're looking for others for comparison purposes, which speaks to the importance of brand, right? This is a very common refrain now in marketing. Got to develop a brand, build a brand. You want people to search directly for your brand, not search for the category, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting that companies that are able to establish awareness through other channels or whatever mechanism are in a much better position with all of this, including on AI, because people will say, compare, what are the CRM alternatives to Salesforce, or compare HubSpot and Salesforce, as a CRM. They'll do that kind of a search. So any sort of elevated brand awareness that you can develop is really important these days, whether B2C or B2B.
So does that mean brand managers move money back to sort of traditional brand building platforms and away from search?
No. What it means is that people talk a lot about brand building, but they still do a lot of performance marketing, because that's what drives, they think, leads quarter over quarter. Witness our conversations with a certain unnamed client of ours who understands intellectually the importance of brand, but is really focused on short-term lead gen.
If you're a B2B company, sometimes you just don't have the brand to do it. You got to grow your
brand
business.
Building is a long-term proposition. It's something that's not easy.
It doesn't necessarily have a direct ROI. So being focused on immediate lead gen is critical for every B2B business.
Right, but you're not, if you're not investing in developing a brand, if you're not building awareness, then long term you're going to be paying more and more and more money for leads, and potentially vulnerable to others who do invest in brand. And it's a complicated thing, because people sacrifice the brand budget at the first sign of any problem, right? It's like, we got to put everything into performance because we need to hit those KPIs or whatever.
I'd argue that Gusto, which does payroll and HR stuff, is moving into the brand building phase for the first time, because I see it a lot on the sports stuff that I watch, whether it's
TV.
golf or tennis. Gusto is advertising. Those are expensive buys. It's live sports, which has got very high, cost per thousand. And they're doing it, I think, for this very reason, so that people start searching for them directly.
I always wonder about those kinds of ad buys. I always see them and I always wonder, why is Accenture advertising on a football game here? I mean, do people really care about Accenture? For everybody that's watching that, does anybody care? Anybody being, that whole audience, but you got like a couple hundred people that care about Accenture so much.
Well, I mean, you've got a giant budget, you've got a giant ad budget, you've got an agency handling that. Somebody's saying, let's put some money over here on TV because we've got a lot of money to spend. So it's, I mean, it may not be the most effective for them.
Just going back to our real, premise here, people are going to ChatGPT or Claude or any of these LLMs, and they're doing B2B searches or information gathering that largely doesn't result in clicks. They're getting their information there. If you're not one of those companies that shows up and you need to do lead generation, what does that mean for you as a business now? What are some other means that you're going to have to go by to generate leads? I mean, interestingly, and Greg and Neil, I don't know if you know this, but John, you led science, and that was, one of the leaders in B2B lead generation, very innovative company. And it feels to me, with people going to ChatGPT and others to do their research, these other methods of reaching your end customer, like the way Science did, for example, are going to become even more in demand, because you can't just rely on SEO anymore for any kind of lead gen.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also kind of wonder if, in a funny way, SEO was created a weird sort of gameable ecosystem, right? Where link building
You're sure
is something that evolved out around that, which is not a sort of supernatural exercise. I wonder if part of what happens next is that traditional brand building actually starts to work again, because traditional brand building has always been about reach and recognition. Are people talking about this brand out in the field? And if you think about the way that LLMs work when they're trained on a large volume of content, if you ask an LLM to fill in the phrase, the best call center software for healthcare companies is, they're going to statistically choose what's most likely to come after that. And you might make the case that those statistics are an indication of better reach and better recognition on the web at large. So it might be interesting, that we maybe a contrarian view here, returning to an era of, traditional brand building.
And I tend to think on that note, like I don't know about you guys, but I've been seeing all of these micro businesses creating a place on whether it's school or other community platforms. You guys familiar with School, SKOOL? Do you know this?
No.
So what people are doing is that they're, it could be an individual entrepreneur, it could be a smaller company, but what they're doing is leading with education. They're creating a community within these platforms to build their brand. And what do? They give away a lot of free education about what they do, free tools, free workflows, free whatever it might be, especially in the AI world. Here are workflows on how to use VO3, or here's how to use some email outreach kind of method, or what have you. And they give away some of these for free, but then for a paid tier, you can access other workflows and other levels of that depth. And it builds that brand. And it's a great lead magnet to be able to pull people in to that environment. And, these are small businesses, individuals, and a lot of these people have 10,000 members who are part of the communities. And that's their way of building their brand in this kind of new environment. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I think totally stuff like that. Community building it becomes a key strategy. It's not easy to do, but it becomes an important thing, and also generates a lot of word of mouth, probably indirectly from that. We could probably devote a whole long session on brand building in this new reality.
Well, tangential to this, all of this is ChatGPT, is come out talking about becoming a shopping assistant, which ties into this agent mode announcement that they had this week. Neil, we were talking about ChatGPT becoming a shopping assistant. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, John's actually played with it, I think. Haven't you, John?
I have. In fact, I have it running in the background here. Let's see. I asked ChatGPT's assistant to find a Lego set for my 8-year-old niece, and it seems to be stuck on the login page.
All right.
I'm navigating the interface, but accidentally triggered the sign in. So you can see what's happening here in this view. It's got a virtual browser that it has sort of spun up here. Seems to be spinning its wheels a little bit at the moment. There's the little cursor there that it's using to navigate the site. I guess this looks to me like it maybe isn't quite ready for prime time, although it apparently has finished the first pass here and may be compiling a list of answers for me. So I don't know. It's a little clunky. Here's the result. This took about 5 minutes. I asked it to go and find Lego sets under $80, appropriate for my 8-year-old niece, and here's what it came back with. And it did that all by browsing the site directly in that form you just saw. This is pretty interesting. I think there's other folks who are doing something similar. But this is kind of what we've talked about prior in this idea of setting these LLMs loose on the web at large. LLMs can speak website just as well as they can speak English. So if you give it a set of commands, it can actually figure out where to point in the browser, what to click on, what to put in the search bar to go and perform various tasks. My prompt for that one was go to Amazon and find me Lego sets for less than $80 that would be appropriate for my 8-year-old niece. And it went in there and applied all the filters and looked for things less than $80 and figured out the sort of thematically things that might be appropriate for a niece and an 8-year-old, and then compiled that list and delivered it back to me.
Why did you put in the word Amazon and not?
I wanted to see it, navigate Amazon specifically. I was just sort of curious how it did that. But yeah, presumably to your point, I could say best price or something else. We were just talking about how you may be able to skip the website altogether. If I hadn't seen all that stuff happening, here's what I would have seen. And this is on Amazon, but there's the only brand opportunity that Amazon has in the search result, right? Everything else is just text here. This is a pretty big deal, doing all of this browsing and searching that Amazon has so carefully crafted for us as consumers. But it's all happening behind the scenes here, and I get a result that's kind of interesting. If I look at this cozy house, a Lamborghini Hurricane, I don't know about that for an 8-year-old girl or boy necessarily, but otherwise, I think it looks like it's doing pretty well.
So, John, months ago we were talking about this concept of one voice AI talking to the next on this new protocol called Jitter Talk.
Yeah.
It seems like there's, like just like what you said, like everybody has crafted websites for usability as much as possible for humans. I wonder if there's going to be a new level of protocol where it's going to be, very highly browsable markup language or structured data in a certain way that makes it easy for these LLMs from a discoverability standpoint, for like LLM optimization,
Yeah. I think
and that kind of direction. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think it's inevitable. I think that I've actually been a little surprised that the approach for browsing the web so far with these LLMs has been about rendering the page in a browser window and moving a cursor instead of just looking at the raw HTML and clicking via the HTML itself. Now, I
Yeah,
think that the reason for that is probably because there's a lot more training data available on people clicking websites than there is training data available on a bot just looking at HTML and clicking through based on that. So I suspect it's a training thing, but it really does suggest that there will be a protocol that makes it easier for LLMs to navigate websites very soon.
maybe that's the robotics training guide at the same time that they're trying to build a foundation for that as well, right? Because that's going to be a physical kind of thing, just like humans do.
Yeah, sort of hooks kind of that an LLM could grab onto in order to manipulate a robot or a website.
Yeah.
I
I
want to
love
go
it.
back to you sort of the bypass thing about, like, you could have gone just said, I need a Lego set under $80 for an 8-year-old, right? And
I
it
could
could have
have,
gone
yeah,
to Lego to find that.
yeah,
And and we could be looking at Amazon bypass. Like, why go to Amazon if you can get it, if you get maybe a richer assortment or inventory at Lego Direct, and they bill you and they ship it. Now Lego gets to keep more that margin that they otherwise would have had to share with a reseller. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
I
That,
think
that
that
that's what GenSpark is talking about with their browser. And we've got this whole wave of AI first browsers that are coming into the market. If there's a shopping comparison, module that's part of those browsers where you're about to buy something on Amazon and it conquests you right in that moment, and you're like, $20 cheaper over there. I'll click on that link, please.
or you just don't even go to Amazon. You just go to your
Well, I
AI
mean, this
browser and just put it in.
Yeah.
I mean,
Seems
that's, if I
natural.
live in Seattle, that's a little unnerving. I've
And
got
just like when you go to the grocery store and you enter in your number and it shows you how much you saved for being a member, I could imagine a browser doing the same thing and showing you how much money on an accrued basis it saved you
yeah.
from, for that exactly that use case.
Just real quickly to sort of flesh this out. So the agent is a combination of deep research and operator, and shopping OpenAI sees shopping as an area of opportunity for revenue. So they want to build a checkout experience that then will, enable them to take a slice of the transaction, which is interesting on multiple levels. And it suggests that they're going to invest pretty heavily in shopping as a use case. And our data, my data with Neil that we've developed based on surveys, show that product research and shopping is a very high frequency use case or a common use case for people. So they're probably seeing a lot of internal data that reflects that, and they're going to build out an experience, with this model.
There's a trust factor in all of that, though, that
Yes,
it's
yes,
really hard for ChatGPT to overcome. Where Google has definitely won customers over. Apple is like the number one trusted company in that space. So OpenAI is going to have to really change their messaging and earn trust.
So to answer your question about why would somebody go to Amazon and not just do this ChatGPT thing that John is describing, Prime, free shipping, easy returns, trust in the brand.
Sure, but a Lego Direct could offer a lot of that stuff.
Yes, I mean, so what you might do is you might. So what I do now is I never read reviews on Amazon. I go to the Wirecutter and see if they have a recommended product in this category. I buy that product in Amazon. I just dispense with the whole process of browsing and looking at ads and reading reviews. It's like I pick the product from some other source, in this case, an editorial recommendation, and then I use Amazon as the transaction tool because I'm a Prime loyalist, unfortunately. And you could see the same kind of thing happen with ChatGPT. People do all their product research and then they go someplace to Walmart or whatever to do the checkout, but they've bypassed Google largely, and they haven't engaged with other. One of the things that Amazon is trying to do is get you to look at ads, get you to buy other products than the product you're there to buy. Their own private label version, right? And so that stuff would all be gone. You wouldn't. I mean, there wouldn't be as many ad impressions, and you wouldn't be they wouldn't be sort of switching you into some other newer version of the product or their private label version or whatever.
Given the amount that Amazon has pushed all the other retailers around for a decade, it'd be sort of nice to see them pushed around a little bit, but we'll see.
That's kind of where I'm coming at. Like, boy, I think there's some retailers who are going to be all in on this.
They're definitely not going to go down. Well, so ChatGPT has a deal with Shopify, so that's part of what's going on, I think, here. Amazon is not going to go down without a real fight. They are not going to go quietly. So you'll see them respond to this in some way.
There's a whole logistics supply chain part of that equation.
Exactly.
That needs to get figured out, and Amazon has built quite a moat around
that's right. That's right. Next day, 2 days. I mean,
unless they offer like an AWS version of what they do, to these retailers, and it's like, it doesn't matter what door you come through, Amazon still wins. And I could see them doing something like that if that direction really does materialize.
The one who's in a weaker position vis-a-vis, let's assume that they build out a really good experience and it works and their vision holds up. I think Google is the one that's more vulnerable than Amazon, in fact, because Google has been fighting with Amazon for years to sort of claw back, retail. They're looking at retail advertising spend, and they've been doing all kinds of things to kind of bolster that. And ChatGPT could offer a better experience, in the near future, and hit them in terms of like, retailers sort of saying, I'm not getting the traffic anymore from you. I'm going to do something different here.
All it takes is one partnership between ChatGPT and Amazon to sew that whole thing out.
And an enemy of my enemy, that kind of stuff.
So interesting stuff. All right, guys. Well, this has been great. Really interesting conversation this week. Thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate it. Any last words before we wrap up, guys?
Be kind to your AI. They're going to rule us all one day.
And but more importantly, be kind to other humans, because there's not enough of that. There's not enough of that in the world.
Amen to that.
Yes. All right. Good note to land on. Thanks everybody. Catch you next week. All right. Bye.